You're about to see Dr. Daniel Wallace, one of the world's leading New Testament scholars, reveal to us whether or not we can trust the reliability of the Bible. To save you some time, he answers 3 questions here. What kind of textual variants are there? What Christian beliefs depend on these variants? And has the essence of the Christian doctrine been corrupted by the scribes? After he answers those questions, I'm going to raise some questions of my own to him. And I've been really excited to share this one with you guys. I really hope you enjoy it and get as much out of it as I did. Check this out.
I wanted to talk to you about the variants and the manuscripts. It's such important evidence to think about. Well, I could break this down into several different categories, but I can simplify it this way. Over 99% make virtually no difference at all. For example, there are spelling differences in the manuscripts that really affect nothing. These don't really affect anything. They can't even be translated. There are so many different kinds of things that don't get translated, difference in word order, spelling differences, other things. And so I have a question for you Greek geeks. How many ways are there to say John loves Mary in ancient Greek? Well, let me give you some issues. Now, if you don't know Greek, you still need to write the answers down because this will show up on the exam tomorrow. There's word order differences. Greek can put it in any order at once. John loves Mary, Mary loves John, loves Mary, John loves John, Mary. It doesn't matter because Greek is a highly inflected language. You tell what the subject is by the end. You tell what the direct object is by the ending. And the Greek definite article, the word the, occurs with proper names. We don't know exactly why. I wrote my master's thesis on when the article does not appear in Greek. I spent over 1,200 hours writing that thesis. I wrote my doctoral dissertation on when it does appear in Greek. These 2 works could cure the most hopeless insomniac. We have the article in the Greek New Testament is far more common than any other word. 1 out of 7 words is the in Greek. And we still don't know why it's used with proper names. Although there have been lots of theories, nothing has compelled scholars to believe it one way or another. So you can say, the John loves Mary, the John loves the Mary, John loves the Mary, and it's always translated, John loves Mary. Then there's differences in spelling. For example, the name in John, for John in Greek either has 2 N's in the middle or 1 N. Every time we see it, there are some manuscripts with 2 N's, some with 1. Ioannes or Ioannes. Pronounced the same, spelled differently. So how many ways are there to say John loves Mary in Greek? There's 8 different ways. I had to obviously put this in Greek. If I put this in English, it would say John loves Mary each time, and so you wouldn't get a sense. So you need to, I'll give you a little time to write these down so you have the data. It's not just this number of ways. There's another 8 ways to say John loves Mary. Same word for loves each time, and it's always translated John loves Mary. It's not Mary is loved by John. Every verse, every sentence, is translated John loves Mary. And some more ways, and more. I can assure you these are all different. This took me 8 hours one day to come up with this. So I hope you appreciate this. Yeah, I'm anal like Brother Andrew, I know. 96 ways to say John loves Mary in Greek without changing the basic meaning at all.
Pretty crazy.
But there's also conjunctions that are often untranslated that go along with sentences like this. And I just picked on a few of them, and so there's some more ways to say John loves Mary. 384 ways to say John loves Mary in Greek without changing anything. Now, there's actually more ways, but after 8 hours, I felt that I proved my point. These are not all the ways to say John loves Mary in Greek. Other legitimate word orders swell the numbers to over 500, and a different verb for loves now mushrooms the numbers to nearly 1,200. Bart Ehrman said we could go on nearly forever talking about specific places in which the texts of the New Testament came to be changed, either accidentally or intentionally. The examples are not just in the hundreds, but in the thousands. He's absolutely right. And if we talked about these, that would cure the most hopeless insomniac. If we can say John loves Mary over 1,000 times in Greek without substantially changing the meaning, the number of textual variants for the New Testament is meaningless. It's a meaningless number. What counts is the nature of these variants. What really is affected? And the smallest category of variants are those that are both meaningful and viable. That is, they change the meaning to some degree and they have a good chance of being authentic. That's what we mean by viable. Less than 1/5 of 1% of all textual variants fit this group. Here's a way to represent it. The big blue box is the number of textual variants we have. And when you hear about 500,000 textual variants, this is the way that most people think about it. But let's talk about the ones that are actually significant. It's that little yellow box in the corner. That's what we're really talking about. I am a member of the Society of Biblical Literature. Bart Ehrman is also a member of that, and he has given several lectures there. I've given lectures there as well. And when we have this group of textual scholars to get together and talk about variants, I can assure you we've never talked about this large blue box. We'd get kicked out of the society for doing something so boring. What we're focusing on are those that do change the meaning of the text to some degree. So let me give you a couple of illustrations. Here's one of my favorites, Mark chapter 9, verse 29. Jesus' disciples were trying to kick out some demons, cast out some demons, and they were unsuccessful. So he said to them, "This kind can only be cast out by prayer and fasting." Or did he just say, by prayer, period? This is the only place in the entire New Testament where "and fasting" may be part of the original text in the sense of it's a command or a suggestion that you need to fast to do something. So maybe if some of you are involved in exorcisms, you might want to hedge your bet and pray and fast, or you might just pray. Most scholars think the original text ends with prayer, but maybe it also is fasting. And of course, just looking at me, you can tell that I agree with the shorter text, but let's not talk about that further. Let me pick a passage that everybody is much more familiar with. Revelation chapter 13, verse 18, last book of the Bible. "Let the one who has insight calculate the beast's number, for it is the number of a man. And his number is 666. Is that really the number of the beast? In 1843, a manuscript was deciphered that had not been able to be read before because it was from the early 5th century, about AD 400, and it was scraped clean by a scribe several hundred years later who wrote on top of it. A German scholar named Konstantin Tischendorf spent 2 years at the Bibliothèque Nationale in Paris deciphering these 157 leaves, retracing the letters of the undertext without retracing the upper text. Very, very patient man, and he got a great deal of acclaim for pulling this off. This manuscript, codex, it's known as a Frami Rescriptus, has become the second most important manuscript of the book of Revelation that we have today. In many places, it has the original wording where the most important manuscript does not. And they kind of vie for which one. It's kind of like between Avis and Hertz for you old folks who know about how that used to be done. But this manuscript does not have 666 at Revelation 13:18. Instead, it says 616. That was the only manuscript that we knew of that had that until 1998, when at the Ashmolean Museum of Oxford University, several papyri were published, and one of them that was just 26 fragments of a manuscript that was spread out over 9 chapters in Revelation. Papyrus number 115 is now the oldest manuscript we have for this passage. And that manuscript also says the number of the beast is 616. So one of the most important manuscripts and the oldest manuscript of this passage say the number of the beast is 616. I've had the privilege of seeing both of these in the flesh, and it's been exciting. I could confirm it. I saw them under a magnifying glass, microscope, and absolutely that's what the original text of these 2 manuscripts says, is 616. Now, most scholars who've wrestled with this have said, we're not sure. We still think 666 is probably the original wording here. I don't know. So these are just a couple of examples. There's plenty more, and I'm sure we'll come up with some of those during the Q&A. Question 3, what theological beliefs depend on textually suspect passages? Well, I go back to Dan Brown in his Da Vinci Code. And he has Sir Lee Teabing say to Sophie, "My dear, until that moment in history, Jesus was viewed by his followers as a mortal prophet, a great and powerful man, but a man nonetheless, a mortal." That time in history was when the Council of Nicaea met in AD 325, according to Teabing and Dan Brown. Emperor Constantine was the one who convened it, and then he left and came back towards the end of it later in that summer. So what Dan Brown is saying is that Constantine invented the deity of Christ. We saw that when we already read from M.M. al-Azmi. He believes something similar to that it was the Orthodox Church, the one that came out in the 4th century that finally won the battle against the others, that affirmed a view of the deity of Christ that Christians today would hold to. Remember when I told you an ounce of evidence is worth a pound of presupposition? Here's an ounce of evidence, P66, and that's the first leaf of P66. Did you see it? I hope you wrote it down. You can read along with me if you'd like. In John 1:1, this is a manuscript dated about AD 200, about 125 years older than the Council of Nicaea. So here's what it says. I'll read it real quickly for you. En arche en halagas, kai halagas en proston theon, kai theos en halagas. Or, you probably know it better as, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What P66 says, 125 years before the Council of Nicaea, is what every single manuscript of John's Gospel, no matter the date or the language, says at this place. Jesus is unequivocally called God. The same could be said for the major passages that affirm his deity, his virgin birth, his sinlessness, his death on a cross, his bodily resurrection, and his second coming. And there are none of these places that deny these things. There are some where the textual variant is, it's not an affirmation, but it's also not a denial. You see the difference? That's a very important distinction to make. So we get to our fourth question. In other words, what theological issues are dependent on this? Nothing essential. Maybe whether you should fast when you're doing exorcisms, but not too many other things. Has the essence, our final question, has the essence of the Christian faith been corrupted by the scribes? Sir Frederick Kenyon, who was paleographer extraordinaire and the principal librarian at the British Museum for many, many years, said this about 80 years ago. The general result of all these discoveries, when a lot of these early papyrus discoveries were being made, and all this study is to strengthen the proof of the authenticity of the scriptures and our conviction that we have in our hands in substantial integrity, the veritable Word of God. I think that's a great statement. In substantial integrity, we have in our hands the veritable Word of God. But it's not just a guy like Kenyon who says that. Listen to somebody whom you already know intimately because he was here last week, Bart Ehrman. In his book, Misquoting Jesus, in the paperback edition that came out after about 6 months after the hardback edition, they had an appendix. And on page 252, the editors of this book asked this question. Why do you believe these core tenets of Christian orthodoxy to be in jeopardy based on the scribal errors you discovered in the biblical manuscripts? Notice, they're not asking, do you believe these core tenets to be in jeopardy? They're asking, why do you believe? In other words, the way they read his book is the way hundreds of thousands of college students and others have read his book. Namely, that Bart Ehrman is saying that the core tenets of orthodoxy, of the Christian faith, are in jeopardy by these textual variants. He even sounded like he was saying that earlier. Here's his answer. Essential Christian beliefs are not affected by textual variants in the manuscript tradition of the New Testament. Page 252, Misquoting Jesus of the paperback version. Essential Christian beliefs are not affected by textual variants in the manuscript tradition of the New Testament.
But so what? I mean, even if the Bible is uncorrupted and reliable, it doesn't make it true. But if it is true, there's massive ramifications today. I mean, it would mean that there's a God who wants to give you deep peace and joy and wants to give you eternal life. And to answer that question, there's three things I want you to consider here. And that's one, is the Bible internally consistent? Two, does the evidence outside of the Bible match the claims made in the Bible? And number three, does the Bible match our human experiences when put to the test in its teachings? And for one, the Bible has a great amount of internal consistency. If you read the text at face value without the preconceived notions and biases to just want to shut it down, you'll find that it's actually like a very coherent and consistent text. Yeah, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of difficult passages in the Bible and verses that can appear to be apparent contradictions. But in all my experience of addressing these and looking at them, 99% of them just don't understand the context. And that 1% that are really hard to wrestle with, there has been intellectually viable options to deal with these passages. And the second thing is that the claims in the Bible, the way it's written, makes them verifiable, the claims. So we use archaeological, historical, scientific, philosophical evidence to put these claims to the test. And so far, every claim that we're able to verify has been proven to be true. But don't get me wrong, there are a lot of claims in the Bible that we haven't yet been able to verify. Some of the biggest ones being like the evidence behind Jesus's miracles. We aren't able to just lay that out and say, yeah, that happened outside of the historical accounts that we have of the events. The third thing is that the Bible really matches our human experiences. When you read the text, you'll see what I mean. And also, in my own life, when I put the teachings of the Bible to the test, things go well for me. And when I stray away from the teachings of the Bible and the way that it tells you to live your life, things end up going bad for me. My quality of life decreases, and I'm just anxious and stressed, and all these other whole host of negative things come my way. But if you really want to get to the bottom of all this, I think you really just got to open up the Bible for yourself and read it. I mean, when I was an atheist 11 months ago, I just kind of do some Google searches, find some objections to the Bible, and just be satisfied, go on my way. But when I actually opened up the Bible, it is a whole different ball game. So I think you really just got to get in there for yourself. But please, let me know if you have any other questions. Comment down below. I'd love to talk to you. Let's have a discussion. I've been really enjoying the comments you all been leaving. Or I also recommend you check out this video on screen to learn more about this. Have a good day.